Hello, my name is Jake Appelbaum, and all right, thanks to you guys in the back. I do a whole bunch of different stuff. Some of it is relevant to Tor, some of it is not. In general, I really like free software, and I do some security work, but I don't consider myself part of the security community. I'm not a white hat. I don't care about fixing corporate networks. So I'm here today to talk only about the bottom point, which is the Tor project. So Tor is a free software project that comes with a full specification. Who here in the room has used it? What are you lagging on, sir? You're the only one that hasn't. Okay, well, so there's 2,000 active relays or so in the network. Maybe today there's like 1,500. We have somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 users. And the network itself is like it's an extremely fast amount. Well, it depends. If you build a stream, sometimes the speed will come, but other times it won't. And we're working on that. We're a 501c3 nonprofit because we think to save the world, you can't be at it to make a profit. If you are, you're going to cut some corners, and part of what we're doing is, instead of trying to make a profit, we're trying to make anonymity a tangible, real thing. And some of the properties that anonymity provides, we want to make sure that those things are not compromised in the pursuit of profit. And as a result, we'll take money from anybody, basically, and we have. We are probably the only free software project to be funded by both the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the Department of Defense. And I think that's pretty great. I never thought that this would happen in my life, but it's great. Google's even funded us for a secure updating program. I get to work with people that I think are awesome that work for social justice, as well as being some of the best technical people you can imagine. And so Tor, in a big picture, is that. So depending on who I'm talking with, or who Roger's talking with, we don't go to, say, my grandmother and explain Tor and say, well, you know, it's traffic analysis resistance, because my grandmother has no idea what traffic is in the context of a network. She thinks traffic is when cars are backed up on the road, right? So she doesn't know about that. And today, I'm not gonna talk really too much about the other aspects. I'm just gonna talk about reachability, because for the most part, a lot of the people that I work with on a basically daily basis are dealing with censorship, and they're dealing with being blocked. So they have specific needs, and depending on the system they use, those systems have specific properties. Some of the properties that they provide seem to be good because they work, where working in this case might mean reachability. But there are some unintended consequences from simply being happy because something is functional. So we try to go above and beyond. And part of what makes this system useful for blocked users and censored websites is that you don't have to worry about the data trail you leave behind. You know, you saw Moxie talking about perfect forward secrecy today, I hope. And Tor has perfect forward secrecy. So part of this is like, if you use an unencrypted HTTP proxy, someone can, and in most contexts does, log all of what you do. If they log what you're doing with Tor, even if they go a couple of days later or even an hour later to the servers that were used in the circuit, if they could somehow find them, they wouldn't get anything. They would not know what you had actually done. And that's something that I think is extremely important moving forward, because we should stop trusting the infrastructure, right? It's 2010 and we still trust the infrastructure. And in some places this is exceedingly dangerous. So what is censorship to you guys, right? Like, I think in many cases people think of censorship as being something that is the other, right? Censorship happens elsewhere. It happens outside of the society that you live in. But censorship is everywhere. And often we hear about it in the context of the other. And so in some of my travels, I've had the opportunity to see both the United States and its censorship through the DMCA, and also other places where there's a lot of non-transparent censorship that happens. And so I think it's pretty depressing worldwide how this is generally tolerated. And when you talk with someone from China about censorship, they think, well, you know, it's just bad people that are being censored. It's okay, and you shouldn't meddle with the affairs of someone else's house anyway. When I talk with someone in the United States, they explain, well, you know, we only block bad people. And there's always rationalizations. But at the end of the day, people are saying the problem is speech, right? And so the answer that they propose is to censor speech. Instead, I think that objectively we need more speech, right? Instead of censoring images of horrific crimes, let the crimes stand and let those pictures be shown to the world so that we are forced to deal with the actual issue and not simply the symptom. Right? If you see a picture of a crime being committed and you erase the photograph, you do not erase the crime. So it's extremely important that we talk about what's actually happening and that we take action instead of simply being submissive to things that are happening around us, whether it's a crime against children or whether it's a crime against humanity on a large scale during a war. And so it's too bad, but in general what you see, as I put here, is authoritarianism triumphing over the individual on a regular basis. And I think that we can combat this. Everyone in this room is in a position of privilege to combat this, actually, because raise your hand if you have an internet connection at your house. How about a computer? Right? Okay, it's about equal. So the thing is that each one of us can make an effort in our daily lives to actually change this if we want to, if we actually care. So instead of having outrage fatigue, we can go home and we can tangibly help a person who previously was without help. And that's, I think, extremely important. And so we can sort of push this back. So I've gotten some critiques over the years about who would use Tor. And generally speaking, someone has a bad experience with Tor or a good experience with Tor. When their experience is good at first, they say positive things about it. When they have a bad experience, they believe that Tor completely consists of only people doing that bad thing, which is not true. So I want to tell you about some of the people that I've worked with. Recently, I went to the Arab Bloggers Conference in Beirut, Lebanon, and the people that I was working with and teaching about Tor or talking with them about OTR and PGP and how to use it safely in concert with Tor, they were people that were fighting against Egyptian police that had put people in jail and held them there after they had been ordered to release them by the courts. These are people that were just being held indefinitely. These are bloggers that were fighting against that, and some of them were successful. Noah Atef is a blogger from Cairo who actually managed to free a man after he had been ordered to be free, after 8 years of I think it was 8 years where he had been held without a real trial, and by the 12th year, he had simply just been sitting in jail because the police officer didn't like the person, and she was able to actually free him. So people like her are people that I think, she's out about the work that she does, and so she has a position of privilege in her society, also being a woman from the Muslim world who is extremely eloquent in the way that she speaks and in the way that she writes. She is able, I think, to effectively advocate in a way that not everyone else can, but that doesn't invalidate their points. But the people that I was working with, they were not doing bad things, they were doing admirable things. They were using Tor because their position of privilege in society is not always what our position in our society is. So journalists, for example, also face an extremely high cost. I went to Qatar to work with Al Jazeera and to explain to Al Jazeera how to use Tor. And one of the things that they told me was that when their journalists go to places, sometimes without naming a specific country, sometimes those countries will find them and kick them out, find them and arrest them, find them and do something. The United States has, for example, killed a bunch of Al Jazeera journalists and targeted them specifically knowing they were Al Jazeera journalists, directly bombing them. So without location anonymity, their ability to report on the truth has cost them tangibly lives. Their organization has had their friends murdered. If you go to Al Jazeera headquarters, you actually get to see, here's the clothing of one of our journalists after we picked up what was left of his body, right? So anonymity in their case allows them to tell a story about what is happening, and without it, it can cost them their lives. Now, that doesn't mean that Al Jazeera is going to be using Tor for something. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. But it's extremely important to them to have that type of integrity and to have that choice in their hands instead of in someone else's, because in some cases, many cases, it will cost them their life for it to be otherwise. And of course, there's always different people that come to blogger conferences that just simply work in technology. And those people are really interesting because they'll set up Tor relays in countries where I wouldn't travel, for example. And I think those people are very brave. And I think that they are also, I admire them in a way that I think that their lives are worth emulating. And so I'm really inspired by them. And I think that people should know that people that use Tor in another country or that are in this country are not simply using it for things that are bad. Although perhaps if you are against Al Jazeera, you'd like that people sit in jails without a trial and after they've been ordered to be released, then perhaps these are not good users. But for me, those are good uses of Tor, and I'm very happy and proud of that. So since it's a technical conference, I want to give you a crash course in Tor, and I don't want to read over this too much. It's most of the text on these slides is here because